Pepper. And do you want anything?
Nah, I'm fine with
Water?
just water. I'm fine with just water.
Just a Sprite and some pepper. Thank you. It's lovely.
So I'm here with in a restaurant talking to Stephen Allen Green, who's a comedian. Not everyone out there has heard of, but he's a pretty good one.
Thank you.
And we're eating some pizza in a restaurant, so there's going to be a little noise in the background, but
Yummy.
it's pretty cool. So we're just having a conversation about comedy and what it's like to do comedy. So when did you start out? What age did you start out doing comedy?
Got a little pizza in my mouth. I was about 7 years old.
Really?
Yeah. I'd already been in showbiz because I want to take this call, but I'm glad he's calling back, and I'll call him later. I already did a TV commercial at the age of 5 and was in acting class at 3. A parents thing, you know?
Right.
And then I wasn't, I moved back and forth, different cities, parents, divorced, and I never know where I was going to school. So a new classroom was like a comedy stage, an open mic.
Right.
I had to make friends fast.
Hey, Sprite.
Thank you for the Sprite.
Thanks,
You're welcome.
Sorry, listeners, you don't get a Sprite. But what happened was, I had grown up doing musical theater. I was a drummer for 8 years in various kid rock bands. Taught myself to play guitar. And when the band broke up after high school, I started being a singer-songwriter and getting all kinds of gigs as a singer-songwriter, but it was all bringers, and people would talk during the song, and then I would make funny stuff in between the songs. And then one night, when I was running an open mic in Hollywood, these two comics, separate comics, Bob Petrella and Buck Simmons, who were very funny, who performed on my show, said, "You're very funny. You should audition at the Comedy Store." And I said, "What's that?" So the next thing I know, I just took the bits I was doing between songs, little short bits, including a bit where I'd say deadpan to the audience, "I just wrote this song, I hope you like it." And then I played them Stairway to Heaven, which is
Right.
pretty apropos for these days with their trial. But I did some talking material. For the 3-minute audition at the Comedy Store in March of '81, 3-minute, I did 4.5 minutes, got 27 laughs, and was hired. I didn't even know I was auditioning.
Huh.
And next thing I knew, I had 15 spots a week, paid spots. Mitzi also had the Westwood Comedy Store. It was the first place I saw Robin
William.
live. Yeah. Everybody played there. Sam Kinison, who managed it, and Seinfeld, Bill Hicks.
Sam Kinison manages
Yeah.
the Westwood. So who's a manager?
Yeah, I read that recently, and I didn't know it at the time. I just read this great book by William Knopfstetter called "I'm Dying Up Here," which is the book that Jim Carrey just bought. Well, he just produced.
I just read that too. I
It's a-
remember reading that part of it.
Yeah, it's man Showtime. But reading this book, for me, was like reading a book of family secrets. Of a family, I knew everyone in the book.
But you didn't know their secrets.
I heard rumors of them. For example, the Improv had a big fire the night before the strike at
Right.
the Comedy Store.
Right.
And
They talk about that in the book. It was
Yeah.
burned down because of the strike.
they said so. Some say so. There was no proof. I know someone who thinks he knows who did it, but the point is that I didn't know there was any animosity between the two clubs. And when I auditioned at the Improv, I had a Comedy Store T-shirt on.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I just thought, hey, it's my resume I'm going to wear. I'm a
Right.
comedian.
Right.
Not that a tourist couldn't buy a Comedy Store T-shirt, but it just gave me confidence to have it on. And it just started a bad road of bad vibes between me and Bud for a long
Oh,
time.
really?
Oh, yeah.
What's not in the book? What do you know from being there that's not in the book? I'm dying, which is great. Everyone listening, go out and get that fucking book. I'm dying up here. It is just amazing.
Yeah,
Even
it's
if you're
amazing.
not interested in comedy, just
Yeah.
get the book. It's
Yeah.
unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of things, I mean, that I experienced. Living at the house behind the Comedy
Oh,
Store.
really?
I lived there with unknowns, Andrew Dice Clay. Sam Kinison slept on the floor sometimes. Yakov lived there. Robin lived there before I moved in. Tom Wilson, a guitar playing comic, was in Back to the Future series. He lived there. I had his room. We used to have 20 people poker games at 2 in the morning. Comics coming up after the show finished. Lines of Coke. It's a nutty world.
There was a TV show filmed in that house for a while.
Yeah, what was that Paulie's show?
I don't know. It was just some unknowns, some people that never went on to be anything.
That was
Some kind of
interviewed.
sitcom. I don't know if it had anything to do with comedy or the Comedy Store, but I think it was supposedly done by the Comedy Store, and it didn't go anywhere. It died. I think you can find it on YouTube. It's really bad. And now the house is sold. Now that's a $6 million house up there, a $3 million house. So that's been sold. That's gone. They no longer own that. But Polly's still there hanging out at the store. It was weird the other day. I saw Chappelle was up on the stage, and he was doing a drop-in, and he was taking up way too much time. And Pauly Shore, because of his lineage, actually had to be the cop and go out and goofily tell him, get off the stage, you're ruining this whole show.
Wow.
Because he wasn't being funny at all.
How did Paul
He
do
was
that from the
drunk.
stage?
Huh?
Did he go on stage?
Yeah, he went on stage. He actually had to be the cop just because he's, related to the owner.
Wow, yeah.
Even though he didn't own the place, evidently. It went to his brother or something. It sounds really emotionally bad for Pauly, too, because, I don't know what's going on in the family, some of my business and all that stuff, but, it seems like Pauly was really put through the ringer over there at the store because he doesn't own the store. He grew up there as a kid, You read the book. It's amazing. Well, so you were basically one of those people that just got in easy. You didn't have to go through a trial by fire.
No, I got in very easy.
Everything was handed to you, kind of.
No, that was the only thing handed to me. They handed the keys to the car, but I couldn't drive it because I only had 5 minutes of material.
Right.
I wasn't a comedian, I was a singer-songwriter. And I was put up on 15-minute spots. So I would kill, and then after 5 minutes fall off a cliff. So I had to experiment because I had, so many artistic loves in my life, and a lot of it centers around music and being in character. And my sense of humor, the humor that got me in, was put on comedy. The same kind of thing that Steve Martin did, and Martin Mull, and Albert Brooks.
Right.
They put on the audience. The joke is on the audience. And you have to kind of really think and get on the inside of it to understand it's funny. And so I tumbled down, but I still got spots. And I finally found my way. And the way for me, the irony is that I was writing and selling jokes to Jay Leno, Arsenio Hall, Jimmy Walker, Roseanne. That was more recently, actually, Roseanne. And I never had my own act because anything I wrote off stage for myself, I got on stage, I felt completely differently. I didn't want to bring the outside world in. I love playing guitar. I love doing impressions and characters. I love different styles. I want to be a variety performer. I was an entertainer. I was a magician's assistant when I was a kid. But the thing that made the huge difference was my spontaneity, which is why Mitzi gave me the MC spot. Because I come alive when I'm talking to somebody and listening to them. And that's where my mind starts working. If I'm alone on stage, it's like being alone in my room. And I write, for livings. And like right now I'm writing, I write for the Jewish Journal, I'm writing reviews. I've been writing reviews for 5 years of stand-up comedy, and now I'm reviewing theater. But I can't sit at home and write it for some reason. I have to go to a cafe, I have to be surrounded by people, but then I get into my head and I focus.
That's what Louis C.K. says. He says he comes up with the premises, but on stage is where he writes most of it. And he keeps it in his head. The worst.
I do that too. I do
You
that
know?
too. I do
Something
that too.
happens on
Yeah.
the stage.
Absolutely. I've had some really good sets lately that have been because I've been open to that. And you know, the thing is, what I see a lot of comics doing, I saw it this morning in Silver Lake at a gig, is they tell what they think is a joke, it doesn't get a laugh, and then they even say, oh, I thought that was funny. And the mistake they're making is they're only telling the premise.
Yeah. No
They're not-
punchline.
There's no, well, not even no punchline, there's no setup. They don't realize they're just telling the premise. A guy did this bit today about how he worked at the theater as a lighting guy, so he'd have to get up at 6 a.m. and set everything up. And the only time that he had to rest was when he was actually lighting the guy. And the performer on stage was going, you know, where's the light? And he didn't get a laugh. And he went, oh, that's not funny. But I thought, you've got to compare that to life. And, you know, what if other jobs were like that, where 90% of it was, you know, setting up and, you know, the actual job was
Right.
relaxing. And that's the whole premise, and that would have been funny.
But it's not. All they have is a premise. As we get, yeah. Where they get in, so eventually you made your way and you had regular spots.
Yeah, and I was
Was there
getting-
jealousy of other comics at the time that you were in and they didn't get in or stuff like that?
Oh, yeah, there was all that. And some comic, actually, it was Robert Aguayo, who said, you know, there's a million ways to get into the Comedy Store and very few ways to get out. You know, it was hard
Why?
to... Well, because, first of all, like you say, everybody thinks that's cool and groovy that you're in. Wow, you're in. But now you are jockeying. Now you're not just competing. See, when you're auditioning, you're competing for the audience's approval.
Right.
That's what you think. Of course, Mitzi wouldn't pass on many comics, even though the audience loved them, because she had the power to do that.
Including Louis C.K. She didn't pass him. She didn't like him.
I think she passed on Seinfeld. She kind of sent Bill Hicks to Siberia. You know, she had a certain taste. She had
Right.
what she liked, and
Right.
you got to respect that. But she had the power to do it. But what I'm saying is, the audience will give you a chance, and that's really all you have. Once you're in, now you're not just competing against comics from the outside. You're competing comics on the inside with all the politics that go on. What comics are close to Mitzi in every possible way you can think of. What comics have secret deals at NBC we don't know about, and their management has put in a word for them.
Right.
And then, of course, the biggest blunder of all, being a comedian, is that maybe, you know, one is just not funny anymore. Or maybe one is boring the audience. Or maybe you're losing the audience for the other comics. And I did a lot of that until I found my voice again. I've lost and found my voice and had to adjust many times. It's the only way to survive as an artist.
So, what made you move to England? What made you decide to go to England?
Well, after 10 years at the Comedy Store, which included national tours in North America, Canada, and the U.S., and all kinds of credits like acting and writing and whatever. Basically what happened was, halfway through my Comedy Store days, in October of '86, I went up on the stage and I told the audience I was leaving show business, that this was my last show.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was totally serious. I was fed up with it. But as soon as I said that, it had this enormous uplifting effect for me because this burden was off my back and I didn't care and I was funny again. The audience wanted me to stay and I said, look, I'll do another farewell performance. And then that became my act, where every show is my last.
Last performance.
My farewell performance. I tell people I'm addicted to the laughter, I have to quit, and I try to kill myself with a gun at the end. And fake gun. And I got a lot of press and a lot of bookings on this. And even, Letterman was interested, and there's a whole story there. But I was living in New York. I had moved to New York, thought I'd make a new start in New York. And it wasn't working. The Improv had closed, the comedy clubs, the comics had gone out to LA. There was resentment if you were from LA. I'd have to wait till 4 a.m. to get put on for 2 waitresses. I mean, Silver at the Improv was nice. Bud's ex-wife. She gave me lots of spots, but they eventually closed. And Louis Ferranda at Catch a Rising Star loved me, but as a visiting act, not a, oh, now you're here
Right.
kind of thing. And I was, watching all these comics, these great comics, like Sarah Silverman, and Louis Black, and Ray Romano, and Jon Stewart. And they were all different from me in the sense that none of them had a guitar, none of them did impressions, none of them were like what I call the classic entertainer, which is what I think I am. So I had first played London in December of '82 when I went over on a visit, and I went to the Comedy Store there and just totally blew them away. And I was unhappy, and my dad, who was alive at the time, was saying, I want you, he was dying, and said, I want you to go back to England. That would be my dying wish. So, okay, so I left my girlfriend for 3 weeks, I thought, from New York. We were living together at the Chelsea Hotel, and I said, okay, I'll see you in 3 weeks. And I went to London.
Who was at the Chelsea Hotel at the time?
Oh, we're talking about that?
Was anyone still there?
Pardon me?
Was anyone still there at the Chelsea Hotel?
Well, there's always someone still there.
Yeah.
Who I knew Dee Dee Ramone.
Right.
I knew Richard Bernstein, who did the covers for Andy Warhol's Interview magazine.
Right.
I knew Arnold Weinstein, a writer who worked with Robert Altman. I knew a lot of people, filmmakers. A lot of people came in and left. Painters, actors. There was a lot of people whose whole life was built around living at the Chelsea Hotel.
Right.
Who's got glamour and big giant platform shoes and yeah. And there were Warhol lights there. So Viva was like the biggest personality there. She was a Warhol superstar. She lived there. And her daughter, Gabby Hoffman, was an actress, or is an actress, was in Field of Dreams as a little girl.
How much was it? This was in the 80s still, or 90s?
Yeah, from 91.
How much is it to live at the Chelsea Hotel? How much is rent at the Chelsea Hotel?
Well, I don't know what it is now. And I know that it's going through some changes. But when I was there, I was paying $1,250 a month in 91 through 2004. I had a very big single with high ceilings, a little tiny kitchen, a bathroom with a bathtub, and a balcony. It's on the 5th floor in the middle, so you didn't have to. And Angie Bowie had lived there, and Arthur Miller's daughter had lived there.
Cool.
Not at the same time, I guess. And at the time, that was the cost of getting a one-bedroom just down the street in Chelsea. So
It wasn't that bad.
if you could afford Chelsea prices, it wasn't that bad. If you were willing to give up the one bedroom,
Yeah.
I was.
Yeah.
Because, I don't know, I got stuck on the place.
Sounds like you can get stuck in there.
Well,
You
you
know?
can. I mean, you come home and there's people at the desk and they greet you, and there's a film crew. I mean, who did I meet there that just passed through? I met Woody Allen, Keith Richards,
Uh-huh.
Robert Redford. They were all filming there. Ethan Hawke. And he broke up with Uma, moved in there.
So you went to England.
So, I hit the ground running. It was the perfect time to go there. The comedy scene had just exploded. There were approximately, get this, 200 comedy clubs in London. I'm talking about packed rooms. So the reason that a lot of our music from the 60s is British
Uh-huh.
and British influenced is because, so 500, 600, 700 years ago, whenever, they built these pubs. Now, there's no pub that's that old. One might be. Actually, there is one. But they built all these pubs. And pubs were public houses. So they were like a bar, but there's also a room for town meetings, village meetings. Because London was all... Imagine Los Angeles. Imagine if you had Westwood, and then you had Beverly Hills. And in between, there was forest. So London's a 900-year-old city. So these parts of London, whether it's Notting Hill, where I lived, or Hampstead, there was villages in between. There was a forest in between. So they had these public houses that were theaters. So in the 60s, that's where, I mean, I did a gig where the Rolling Stones started in Richmond. They had these great pubs and stages, plus a great sound system, plus a homogenous audience that knows who they are, plus people in a culture that loves to go out. Television is remarkably better over there in so many ways, in my opinion. But still, people go out and they like a good laugh. And I never met anybody in England that did have a good sense of humor, because it's almost like a point of pride with them. And they understood something I didn't get, which was irony. The thing that got me in trouble was always being like misunderstood. It's like always having to say, no, this is a joke. Don't you get it? You're
Right.
offended, you're angry at me now.
Right.
And I'm not just talking about something I'd say, but something I do. But over there, they totally understood what I was doing before I did.
Monty
And
Python.
What about Monty Python?
They're very ironic.
Yeah.
That's part of the English sense of humor. you
Right,
know?
right.
So, they get it. So, you did well in England. You got a TV show eventually over there.
Well, I mean, it's all kind of a blur, but I suddenly was an instant headliner, and people were calling me. And I played comedy clubs all over the country and theaters. Not on my own theaters, but
Right.
theater shows. And I did shows at the Edinburgh Festival, because that's the way you get known and you get developed and respected, the Edinburgh Festival. And I did 7 of those. But in terms of television, yeah, I mean, I did a bunch of little things for television, a little 2-minute set here, 5-minute set there, interview here, and I was on the radio a lot. In fact, I was a BBC reporter, international comedy correspondent in New York one summer.
Oh, really?
Yeah, for Radio Scotland. Fred McCauley, who was down here in LA last year. I made a movie, a zombie comedy, which I wrote and directed.
Is that online? Can you find that?
I can send you a link.
All right.
Yeah, the 60-minute trailer is on YouTube called Little Things Trailer. It's really fun. I used a half a dozen comics as actors. I had a 92-year-old sitcom star. It was great. And I'm working on a couple of movies now, one in England and one in America. But in any case, here's what happened. I started to come back to America and see my friends, slumping over the bar at the Improv, wondering
Right.
where their careers had gone and why comedy was so shit and the audience was so stupid and and the clubs weren't giving them their recognition anymore, even though they helped build the clubs.
Right.
And they were, trying to keep a painful, happy face on top of it all. And I saw how well I did, because I was basically the biggest loser comic in LA. I was. There was a meeting. This is what I heard. My manager at the time told me this. There was a meeting at the Improv of all the comedy clubs, the head of the 5 families,
Uh-huh.
and they were discussing how can they do business, how can they bring business in. And someone said, "Well, about people like Seinfeld, they made it because of us." Yeah, but their management won't let us put their name on the marquee. That's ridiculous. And then somebody who I will not mention because I like him, a club owner here, said, "Why don't I know who we can get." They went, "Who?" Stephen Allen Green. And they all laughed. Everybody knew me. And they didn't get me. And they thought I was crazy, and they thought I was a loser. And I went to a foreign land with an average IQ of 17% higher than the average American. And I was treated like a regular Joe, but I was actually treated brilliantly.
Uh-huh.
So, somehow or another I got in touch with Turning Point Scotland, which is a drug and alcohol charity launched by Princess Diana. And we basically came to an agreement that in 2000 I was going to produce...
Coffee, anything?
No, that's good.
No, good. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
So basically, I decided to produce... I created High on Laughter.
Uh-huh. TV show.
Yeah.
And how long did that run?
Well, the live shows ran 3 years. So we did the first one in Edinburgh in 2000. Here, let me. It was 900-seat theater. I brought over Zach Galifianakis, George Wendt, who did improv with an improv troupe, Rick Wright, and British and American comics. That went so well. The next year, 2001, 3,300-seat Edinburgh Playhouse. And then the following year, at the London Palladium, where the Beatles played for the Queen. And this time I was going to film it for television, and I did. And I brought over comics, and I had 15 British and American comics. And I got it on television. And I got about 10 minutes of it on television. And I'm still sitting on the rest. I'm actually trying to sell the rest right now.
Right, you're still on it.
Still on it. And
That's good.
Jerry Lewis was on that show, and Jerry Lewis stole the show. And Jerry Lewis made international news and caused me a lot of pain, a lot of money, and a lot of embarrassment. And, my bad. Should have dumped him when Jackie Mason told me to dump him, but I didn't. Dump Jerry Lewis? What are you going to do? Jerry Lewis? Are you crazy? And I believed in Jerry, and he was in tears half the time on the phone with me, and I understood. He felt like a joke in America. I felt like a joke in America. I went over to England, where they're smarter. With due respect, you're one of the smarter people I know, so you can be British. But I'm saying, for the most part, it's not a genetic thing. It's just people just don't know how to. They don't know how to listen. They don't know how to think laterally. And I theorize it's about the language, because the English language, the British English language, forces you to think. The American one.
Use more water. Sure. Thanks.
Can I, or is this your treat?
It's all right. Yeah, I'll take care of it.
Thank you. Uber driver. It's basically what I am. So
you brought Jerry over to do a show, and then you said he needed to do. You paid to bring him over.
Well,
and his entourage.
Yeah, I paid his entourage. I paid.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. I provided an orchestra. He requested an orchestra. You know how expensive an orchestra is?
Yeah, it's nuts.
So would you drink besides water?
So you provided an orchestra, and he didn't want to do press at all.
Well, that was part of it. It's part of it. Well, I was dealing with a two-headed monster.
He was one person one day and then another person
Yeah.
the other day?
Yeah, basically. So one minute he would say, Stephen, nobody knows what it takes to put on a show like this, like I do. I'm going to be there 100% of the way for you. As soon as the telethon's over, I'll give you 2 weeks to do press, whatever you need, my friend. You and I stand on the same part of the stage. Next 2 weeks later, hey, Jerry, I don't need 2 weeks of press. I just need a couple hours on the phone. I'm not doing any press. I'm not doing a show. I eat people like you for breakfast. So that's what it was like. And it got worse and worse until I was too deep in. I'd already spent $40,000 on advertising. And I believed that I could make it happen. I believed that I could get the better of Jerry Lewis. And, I had trouble with a comic the year before. Charles Fleischer.
I've heard of him.
Yeah. He cost me a lot of money. And I paid and put ads, and he agreed to do the show. And what was his beef? He asked me, how much are you paying for the first class tickets? And I go, what does that matter to you? And he said, no, I just want to know. I really want to know. So I said, okay, I'll call you back. So I called my travel agent. And this was Virgin Upper Class, which is their version of first class. Virgin's a great airline. I think it was only about $5 or $6 grand. And so I told him, and he said he wasn't doing the show because they didn't pay enough for the ticket. And hung up. And then I was stuck with
No
ads.
headliner.
No.
And hand.
No. I had 12 comics on that show. I had Emo Phillips, Charles Fleischer, and Mark Thomas, who's a political comic from Britain. So it was Charles Fleischer, the voice of Roger Rabbit, Mark Thomas, the voice of the people, and Charles Fleischer, the voice of Roger Rabbit, Emo Phillips, the voice in his head.
So what happened?
I had to replace him,
Wow.
which cost me money. Do you know why he did this, by the way?
What?
because he was going to cash in his ticket. Because that was his. He didn't even tell me this.
Ah,
He was going to take the ticket and sell it.
and then go coach.
Yeah.
Ah,
And what a fucker, because it was for a charity, a good charity. Turning Point Scotland, I've been there. I know those people. And they actually...
dirty tricks.
Glasgow has the highest population of heroin users, and these are teenagers.
So what happened with Jerry? What happened with Jerry? What happened with his thing? Eventually, he didn't show up, or
no,
did?
Jerry, he pulls out of the show, so I'll just condense it for you.
Right.
He pulls out of the show 4 or 5 times. Doesn't do the publicity. Shows up in London, treating me like shit. On the time, he did one interview, but it was on the day. It was too late. It would have been like news they were presenting the day after. I provided an orchestra which cost around 30 grand.
Wow.
Because it was for rehearsals and the tech rehearsal was 2 o'clock. The show was at 8. He shows up at 4. Find out he didn't bring a sheet music.
Oh my God.
What do we do? Jerry, we don't have a sheet music. He yells at me in front of everybody. I've been in showbiz 50 years. I'll give you a show and you'll like it. And I was giving him a fucking award. I don't know why it was like this. Oh yeah, he said it. He hung up on me once, So he was pissed off I hung up on him. This is after he said, I eat people like you for breakfast. And he wouldn't do the press. You couldn't get around him. So he locks himself in the dressing room with my wife at the time, who was co-producing the show. Big dressing room. Keeps me out. Had me hire bodyguards, which I paid for, $4,000 for 4 days, to keep me out of the dressing room. They tried to have me thrown out of my own theater.
Wow.
All while I have 15 British and American comics, a nice house of audience, cameras rolling, everything on the line. I could have sold this whole thing. In fact, Comedy Central UK wanted to buy it, but I didn't have enough hours.
Wow.
They wanted it for a series. So, because he didn't do the publicity, my publicist that I hired in London said, how about Daniel Kitson? I don't know Daniel Kitson. Well, he just won the Perrier Award in Edinburgh. He'll get a lot of people in. Okay. Daniel Kitson comes out, his opening line is, it's always been a dream of mine to play a third full Palladium to people who are here to see a dying man. and I couldn't get back and knock on the door with Jerry. I didn't. So more comics went on. Bobcat Goldthwait, Rick Overton, Emo again. And Jerry's about to come out. And the plan was that he was going to eventually do songs with the orchestra. That wasn't going to happen. The orchestra's all sitting on stage with their instruments in their laps and their thumbs up their asses. Thank God I also had a rock band there, Ronnie the Rex. They did some time. And Jerry brought clips of his career. And one of the things he requested and I paid for was a giant video screen and projector, because the Palladium is the biggest, longest stage I've ever been on in my life. When you're like off stage, looking across stage, it feels like a mile away. Very, very long stage. So I had a big screen to fill that. And we showed Jerry's clips. Jerry gets word to Peter, my showrunner, that Jerry won't come out of the dressing room to accept the award from me until I leave the theater.
Oh, really?
So I hid in the wings, and as the clips went up and showed him 50 years ago, thin and young, and at the top of his game and famous, and then he was 76 when he was at my show, and very overweight, looking like Jabba the Hutt,
Right.
not feeling well, and looking out at the audience, and then he collapsed off stage. He just, boom, fell to the ground. And the clips, ironically, kept rolling. And then the clips ended, and the screen went up, and I had to come out and say we had a technical problem. Bring on Bobcat Goldthwait's friend, Tony V, who didn't know we was performing, and filled in nicely. And then come out and announce that Jerry was taken to the hospital. And he never went to the hospital. He went to the ambulance, and then he went back to the hotel and flew back to America the next day.
So he was faking it?
Yeah, King of the pratfalls. He
Wow.
he became famous by falling. You know that. So
Did you lose your house? You lose the farm on this?
I lost the farm. Yeah, well, I mean, it was a combination of things where I lost the house. So basically, that show cost me a lot more money. We'd still raised money for the charity, but that show cost me more money than I expected, a lot more money. But I was hoping, and I was like, I was on the phone with Comedy Central and BBC on different, I got a TV show. Who's on it? Well, I got a bunch of British American comics and Jerry Lewis. Oh, interesting. So I was betting on this as a big international, just a TV special, comedy special.
Right.
And
Eventually, things kind of died out in England because of that.
No. What happened was I met with lawyers, 7 different law firms on both sides of the Atlantic. I concluded don't sue. It just was a risk I just didn't want to pour money into. And I called up Peter, who was my showrunner and a good mate of mine, and I said, look, maybe I want to do a one-man show about this. Maybe for Edinburgh. It's an interesting topic. Everyone seems to be asking me about it because that's what happened. Everywhere in London, New York, and LA, comics and club owners and agents would say, did Jerry Lewis really did he fake his collapse or did he really collapse? It's one question I could never answer. So I did this one-man show. I got this guy named John Dowie, who's a comic and a poet and a writer, and he works with Neil Innes from the Ruddles, and he helped me create I Eat People Like You for Breakfast, which is a one-man show about growing up in Hollywood, meeting your idols, London, the whole thing. We did that at the Edinburgh Festival the following year. Great reviews, national recommendations. When it came down to London, I was, it was like second in all the country. I mean, Jimmy, who was in the audience that night was Ricky Gervais and Stephen Merchant before they created The Office.
Uh-huh.
So I got to talk to Ricky about this. I got to know Ricky a little bit about this.
It went well.
Huh?
So it went well. You got a show out of it.
Well, I sold 10 minutes of it to Bravo. I got the Fame show, the one-man show. And then an Oscar-winning producer named Julian Cranen sees it and says that he'd been trying to make a movie about Jerry Lewis. He had the book rights to film rights about a book about Jerry. And what happened was I bought so what happened was this. Paul Provenza came over to my house. He was on the show with Overton and a few other people. He came over to my flat in London after the show. We were talking about it. Provenza said, "You got to read this book by Sean Levy, who wrote Rat Pack Confidential. It's called King of Comedy. Jerry Lewis is just like, you got to read this." So I read the book, contacted Sean, bought the film rights to Sean's book about London, which I still want to make into some kind of movie. And Sean hooked me up with Julian Cranen, this Oscar-winning producer. And we co-wrote a script, and we had a lot of interest over the years. It's been rewritten. I pitched this story face-to-face in a bar to Kevin Spacey. He was not just listening to a pitch, he was asking me, tell me about this. This is amazing.
Right.
Rob Reiner had the script at Castle Rock for a year, decided against it. We had Mark Rydell, who did On Golden Pond and The Rose. We had interest from Jack Black. We've had a lot of interest. It's a hard movie to make because people think it's an attack on Jerry Lewis, and they're also putting money into tentpole pictures, and this is more of a niche movie.
I did see Jerry Lewis perform once at just a place. It was some kind of a Zig Ziglar kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And he went up, and he was incredible. It was just amazing. And all I did was stand there and read off of his notes at a little lectern. And he was incredible. And he performed to this big audience.
How long ago?
It was amazing. Oh, God, it must have been 20 years ago or something like that.
No, 20 years ago, yeah.
You know?
Sure. No, he's
15 years ago.
No, he's brilliant. I mean, he's one of the... I was talking to Julian about this. He's one of the smartest men you'll ever meet.
So things died out in England, pretty much.
What do you mean?
You came back to America. Why did you come back to America?
Well, when I left England, I was doing shows. They were going great. I had a national TV commercial running. I've been working on just directed the film. But the housing market crashed, and at the same time that my income from America crashed, and I lost my home. But I had been carrying around in that mortgage my own foolishness, including financing a film, but financing Jerry Lewis's 4-day holiday that he spat on.
Right.
And he ruined my business. So I had at least $175,000 that Jerry Lewis cost me and spat on me when he stole the money. And that was factored into my mortgage. And so I came back here. I had a girl here, and I thought, okay. And my mom was here and was not well. And I thought, I'll spend some time in Hollywood trying to get the movie produced. And then things got worse. I always describe what happened to me as like I'm in an airplane over the ocean, and the airplane loses power and starts to dive, and you think, oh my God, we're gonna crash when we hit the surface of the water. Instead, you're now underwater, and you have to worry about drowning and getting eaten by
Sharks.
well, sharks. Yeah, okay. I'm thinking sharks, but no. Well, sharks. So things got worse. I lost my car. I went back to England to do a TV pilot. I was casted just like that. Left my car here like I always do. It was in the underground garage. Got towed away by the city, and they sold it for lack of registration. I just didn't get the info. And I went to the Comedy Store, and they told me to go away. And none of the clubs.
Even though your name's on the wall.
Yeah,
Comedy Store.
I know it's a big deal now, isn't it? I don't get spots there. I don't call in.
Nothing. They told you to go to the audition, to the open mic, basically.
Tommy, who worked there, told me. He said,
The old manager.
Look, I didn't go in there saying, I'm Stephen Allen Green. I knew I was gone for 25 years.
Right.
And I knew I'd left Under a Cloud because of a book I wrote.
Uh-huh.
But
What's the book?
it's called Confessions of a Showbiz Junkie, and it was sort of just an artistic journey into finding out what my comedy voice was.
Can you get it on Amazon?
I can't get it anywhere. I had it all. It was never on disc. I had it in storage, and I just lost everything, every family heirloom and manuscript to public storage. And I'm actually doing an investigative piece on them with BuzzFeed. So what they stole my storage space, basically. I lost everything.
Wow.
Yeah, bastards.